Good morning, graduate students, and welcome to our talk with Dr. Sherine Obare. She is an environmental chemist and the dean of our Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering. She received her bachelor's in chemistry with a minor in biology from West Virginia State University and got her PhD in organic and analytical chemistry from the University of South Carolina. Dean Obare did her postdoctoral education in chemistry and environmental engineering at Johns Hopkins University. And if you were in attendance at our February Come Talk with GSA, Dean Obare talked to us about networking, branding, strategic planning. This topic was very popular amongst graduate students, so we wanted her to come back to do a talk about career mapping and strategic planning. So thank you very much for putting us in your schedule, Dean Obare. It's always great to host you with GSA. So you can go ahead and take over.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to come and be with graduate students and to talk a little bit about, how to plan for the future and how to plan for success. But before I start with my presentation, I just wanted to express my appreciation. This is Graduate Student Appreciation Week, and I just want to express my appreciation to the role graduate students play at the university, but the role that you play sort of in the larger ecosystem of our communities as well. Many of you serve as teaching assistants to our undergrad students. Many of you are involved in several service type activities, but most importantly, you're really driving the research mission of our institution. So we all, as many of you know, the faculty sort of tell you what to do, but it's you who's actually doing the work, right? So I want to just take a moment and just express my appreciation, especially to the students who are working at JSNN. I know we rely on you guys every single day to sort of turn that wheel for us and to really define who we are going to emerge to become. So again, my sincere appreciation to all of you for all you do for the university. So I was visiting in February, as Lexi mentioned, and at the time I talked about networking. I'm very passionate about networking because I really believe it's about what you know, but more importantly, who you know. Right, who you know opens doors that you wouldn't really expect. So I came and I shared with graduate students, the whole idea of networking and some of the ways that as somebody young trying to figure out what to do, how to really navigate that process. So I talked a little bit about strategic planning and how you brand yourself. And then Lexi reached out later and said, I really need someone to come talk about strategic planning and career mapping. And I said, you know what? I'm more than happy to come do it because grad students are my favorite. Don't tell the undergrads though. So I'm going to share my slides and just talk to you a little bit. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you a couple of things to kind of think about, and then we're going to do like maybe a quick breakout session to get you guys to think about a few things, and then to kind of go from there. But the reason why career mapping and strategic planning is so critical is because sometimes what ends up happening is you find yourself sort of succeeding through grad school and you land that first job, and then you sort of think that that's when your career begins, right? But what I learned the hard way is that my career actually began the first day I was a graduate student, except I had no clue that that's when my career had actually begun. And the reason I say this, and I just, if there's any take-home message I want you to take with you, is the fact that your career starts on day one. When I became a professor, and mind you, I went through grad school, I went and I did a postdoc, and then I became a professor. But when I became a professor, the most important thing I needed to do was to write grants. And when you write your grants, credibility matters. People want to know, people want to see evidence of the fact that you have the credibility to do the work. And that evidence comes in multiple fashions. It comes in the articles that you've published. It comes in the quality of where those publications appeared. And it also shows up in the type of training of others that you have demonstrated. So I had to sit there. I remember writing this big grant for the National Science Foundation and thinking to myself, what did I do 5 years ago? Where did I publish it? Where's the evidence? And how do I demonstrate to those that are going to be reviewing my grant that I have credibility, right? So your career started on that first day of grad school, okay? Your career is already on the way, right? And so what you want to do now is really start thinking about how do you map this and how do you strategically plan to make sure that when you start, whether you're going to go into a faculty position or whether you're going to go into an industry position or a government position, you need to start planning that yesterday. So that's what I want you to be aware of. And so I'm going to talk to you about a few tips of what you need to do. So unfortunately, a lot of what you need to know for that job, you don't learn it in the classroom, right? So I always tell students, there's so much out there that we don't learn in the classroom that becomes so critical in terms of who we become and how we really succeed in those career choices. So there's always, this idea of like, what experience do you have? So anytime you apply for a job, people are looking at your skills and your experience. And to a certain extent, we help you prepare for that. As grad students, we help you in terms of like making sure you know how to run, your research, right? You do a really good job with your research. You do a super good job with your with just kind of knowing the techniques that matter in your field, right? But then what really matters, right, is how others are assessing you. Remember, everybody has to assess you. And it's really this whole idea of competency and assessment. And so it's so important to know in your field, how are you assessed, right? And so if I was a grad student thinking about applying for a faculty position, they would be assessing me based on the number of publications, but also where those publications appeared. Okay. If I was that same grad student thinking of applying to an industry position, while those articles matter, they're also looking potentially for maybe patents, right? They're also looking for very specific skills, right? And so they're not going to like allow you to sort of come in and then figure it out, right? They want you to have figured it out. People hire you based on your experience, right? And so understanding the metrics for success for that particular organization that you're interested in moving into is so important for you to be doing that today and not when you graduate and start looking for that position. So go back in time and start thinking about, how do I plan this, right? And how do I make this work? I currently don't have any personal graduate students because I transitioned to UNCG about 2 years ago, right? And so I graduated my last PhD student who was in Michigan last summer, and I haven't really taken on new grad students. But when I had grad students on the first day when we met and we had agreed that they were going to be my research graduate students, the first thing I would say is, I want to take a look at your resume. And we would look at it. And then I would say, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. I want you to go home and write what your resume is supposed to look like on the day you graduate. And then we would meet again and we would go back and I would say, well, how do you expect to get 5 publications? What are you going to do about that? Right? Let's start planning it. And that's how we would go back and do that planning. Right? So all of you have homework tonight, right? Your homework is to sit down and look at what your resume looks like today and where you would like it to be on that wonderful day when your graduate advisor puts that hood on you, or when you get handed that MS diploma. What do you want that resume to look like? Let's not wait until the day when you graduate. Let's start planning for that today, right? Because it takes a while to figure out how you're going to get that high quality publication. And it takes planning. It takes strategically planning what it is that you're going to have to do. So it's really important, it's really critical to really begin to think about that. So think about your aspirations, right? So what we're thinking about here is aspirations. Where do you want to become? Okay, where do you want to wake up on that day that you graduate and say, okay, I got my PhD, yay. But it's so much better to say, I got my PhD and I have 14 publications, right? That to me is so much better than I got my PhD, right? And so, think about that, and think about, stop planning on how you're going to get there. But it's not just about you having a plan. It's about you having a plan, letting your advisor know about your plan, and letting anybody else that you hope is going to help you know about your plan, so that they can help walk you through that process. You know, none of us is able to do anything on our own, right? I mentioned to you a little while ago that at JSNN, the way we get to where we get to is because of you, right? You're the research drivers. If it wasn't for grad students, we wouldn't be able to get to where we're trying to go. So it takes a community, right? It takes a community for us to get to where we are. So you are not on your own, right? You have other people who are able to help you and support you. It takes, a give and take for us to be able to get to where we are. You need to, and so when you're thinking about this give and take and who's that community that's going to help you reach where you're going, you really are doing a gap analysis, right? Do you have what it takes? And the answer is no, none of us have what it takes, right? I know people who are about to retire who have spent 40 years doing their job and they still don't have what it takes, but they have learned how to compensate for their deficiencies by working with others, right? So it takes effort to find out and to be honest with yourself about what are some of those deficiencies, what are some of those gaps. Be honest with yourself. And some you can learn, and some you just have to like rely on someone else to provide that to you. And then how do you get there? This is a consistent conversation, right? I feel as some days I wake up and I'm like, I'm a grown person now. I'm no longer a child. I'm no longer a student, but I still ask myself every single day, how do I get there? Who do I need to network with? Who do I need to work with in order to be able to get to where I need to go? Right? Perfect example. Lexi said, we're gonna partner and do this food truck. And what did I do? I reached out to grad students. Hey guys, I need help. Right? So you just never know, but you have to have the humility to ask for help. Right? A lot of us think of ourselves, well, I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer, I'm a grad student, I'm about to get this PhD, I can do this all by myself. And the answer is no, none of us can do anything by ourselves. We have to rely on the support and partnership of others. And that's what makes you very, very successful. And then always reviewing and assessing and being humble about making sure that you have access to what you want. So someone once asked me, they said, well, how do I know? So I asked one of my students, I'm like, go put your resume together and I want to see what it's going to look like 5 years from now so that we can figure out how you're going to get there, right? And I remember her sitting there just in awe, like, well, how do I just know I want to go work in the cosmetic industry. And I was like, well, you know what you can do? Get the resume of somebody who's successful and start looking at it, right? I remember when I was a grad student, I knew I wanted to one day become a professor, but I didn't actually know how I was going to get there. And I went to my PhD advisor and I said, can I see your resume, please? And she gave it to me. And I sat there looking at it and saying, oh my gosh, these are the things I have to do, right? And I would sit there and backtrack. I'm like, okay, when she was a grad student, these are the things she did, right? And you can time it, right? But look at the resumes of people who you feel are good role models, right? Look at the people who you may not like very much, but you like where their career is, right? And be critical of what you're looking at, right? Some people's resumes, you're like, not great, but they made it to this point, right? And sometimes they may not have made it at all, right? And it's good to see why. Why did they not make it, right? So take advantage of resumes of people who's posted on LinkedIn. People are now posting their resumes on LinkedIn, right? So you don't even have to ask. You can just go look at their resumes and really try to figure out like how long did it take them to get there? What did they have to do? What kind of humps did they have to, overcome, right? So it's easier now, but I encourage you to start looking at the resumes of people in those positions that you aspire to reach. And if you get to know them, feel free to even ask them, and don't hesitate to reach out and just say, I've really admired your career and I would really like to learn more. Ask, reach out and ask questions, and don't be afraid. Okay. The other thing is it's really important to sometimes, have that humility to ask questions like like, when I apply to this job, like, yes, you're going to have all the skills, with respect to the research that you're putting in, but what does the application even look like? Like when you apply to an academic position relative to when you apply to an industry position, relative to when you apply to a government position, the requirements for that application is so different, right? So for example, if you're going to apply for a faculty position, you better have a teaching philosophy, and it better be a very compelling teaching philosophy, right? So for those of you at JSNN, we talked a little bit about professional development. I'm putting together a series of professional development topics. And one of the things that we're going to do is spend time working on what is a teaching philosophy? What does it look like? And what does it take? And how do you demonstrate your passion for teaching, right? And if you don't have it, don't lie about it, right? But there are other ways to be able to demonstrate what your philosophy of teaching is. When you apply for a faculty position, you have to also write a research proposal, right? So thinking about that now, not when you're graduating or when the application is due. It's thinking about that now, really understanding the landscape of what's going on is really, really what matters. Knowing the difference between a curriculum vitae versus a resume, right? So your curriculum vitae is a little bit more extensive. It talks about the details, whereas your resume is more condensed, something short. And that's what industry is looking for. Industry is looking for a resume, something that's a one pager, because they're looking at thousands of these things, whereas a curriculum vitae is more of an academic thing. And they really want to be able to see the details of your curriculum vitae. So how do you get there, right? So we've talked a little bit about, think about the resumes of individuals who you feel have those careers that you would like to see yourself in the future. But there's also a series of individuals who you really need to figure out who they are and position them appropriately, okay? So sometimes, so we all have advisors in grad school, right? So everybody has a research advisor or some kind of an advisor who can work with you. Your advisors, sometimes we make the mistake and call them mentors. Advisors and mentors are two different things, and they have two different roles, right? An advisor is supposed to be there to help you get through your academic process, right? They can help in terms of telling you these are the courses you need, this is the research that needs to be done, but they're not really mentoring you. Some may be able to mentor, but for the most part, they might not be mentors, okay? So you need to figure out who your mentors are, right? You cannot know who your mentors are until you figure out what your needs are, okay? So I can give you a really good example. If you happen to be someone who maybe wants to try to figure out how to better balance family and home and a career, right? You need somebody who knows how to do that, right? And and genuinely wants to support you. They have no stake in the game, right? As advisors, we have a lot of stake in the game. I need you in the lab 12 hours, figure out how to do that, right? We have a lot of stake in the game, right? So you need to figure out mentors, people who are going to give you advice that have no stake in the game. Okay, that's who a mentor is. And you need to be honest with yourself in terms of like, what are the needs that you have in order to be able to get mentors who can really help walk you there. Okay, they can be peer-to-peer mentoring, right? Don't forget about your peers. Some of your peers can be mentors as well, people who you can go to and say, hey, I saw that you did this. Can you walk me through the process? Can you help me? Can I just chat with you? And they're sitting there helping you and mentoring you, right? Peer-to-peer mentoring is a thing, and you want to take advantage of it, right? But you also want to be able to find mentors in your community. Sometimes we find them in our places of worship. Sometimes we find them, sometimes our people get psychologists who can help. I just want to talk, I just want to vent, right? And it's totally okay for that person to even assume the role of a mentor, right? They might be people who are in certain careers and but you want to make sure that you differentiate who your advisor is and who your mentors are, right? Because your mentor needs to be able to give you, just nice, clean advice with no stake in the game, right? There's also this thing called sponsors, right? And a lot of times we forget completely, or we don't even take into account who a sponsor is. And sponsors are people that you may never know are your sponsors, right? Sometimes you just have no clue who a sponsor is, right? You have absolutely no idea who your sponsors are. But those sponsors are people who will talk about you and advocate for you when you're not in the room, right? Sometimes something happens and you're like, oh, how did this happen? I have no idea, right? Somebody nominates you for an award, somebody does something really cool for you, you get a call and somebody's like, hey, are you available to come help out with this particular initiative? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I'm getting these opportunities. These are really cool. Sponsors are people who you just have no clue are going to be advocating for you. And the question is, how the heck do I know them? Or like, where do I find them, right? And it takes effort. It takes effort on each and every single one of us to develop these sponsors. They come through networking, okay? They show up when we're giving talks at conferences. You do a really good job, and somebody's like, wow, now that's someone I would like to network with, or that's someone who I feel has potential, right? So every single time you happen to be in public, whatever you're doing, right? People are watching. And those people who are watching are your sponsors. And you never, ever know who's watching. You have no idea who's watching you when, right? Your emails are being watched. Some of them are being forwarded, right? Your social media is being watched. Some of it is being shared, right? So there's always someone out there being a sponsor, and how you are perceived, how people are watching what you're doing is either providing you with more sponsors or taking away sponsors. Okay. So sometimes you hear me say like communication matters, right? Because every time you're on social media, you're communicating something or the other, right? Every time you're sending an email, you're communicating something or the other. Every time you're texting someone that's not a family member that you may have a professional relationship with, they're watching. They're watching every single move you're making. And when that opportunity arises, when you have no idea it's arising, right? And somebody has to think right off the cuff of someone they need to recommend for whatever opportunity it is, they are immediately trying to think of maybe you, right? So prepare yourself for sponsors. Always be prepared, always be ready, because you just never know when they're going to show up. And they are your strongest advocates, okay? Coaches. A coach is somebody who's willing. A coach could also be your peer, but a coach is someone who's willing to sit there and spend the time and help you out, whether it's helping you practice for your next presentation, for your dissertation, somebody who you're just like, help me write my cover letter for the job. Help me even figure out what to say on this cover letter, right? You need coaches who you are not embarrassed to let them know that you need help, or you feel you have a weakness and they can walk you through the process, right? Sometimes you may not totally feel comfortable with your graduate advisor, and that's okay. That's totally okay. But figure out who you're comfortable with, establish that relationship with them, and let them coach you. Don't walk blind. Get coached on areas that you feel you need to get coached, right? You need critics. Oftentimes, it's so easy for us to say, oh my God, that person is always criticizing me. I am not going to have that professor on my committee because he's so critical, right? Let me tell you, your critics are your best friends, right? You want to get you want someone to criticize the quality of work you're doing so you can be better, right? You have to live every single day knowing that you want to be better. Okay? You want to be better. I have seen individuals so afraid to submit an article, so afraid to go out in public and give a talk because they know they're going to get criticized, right? And I tell people, if you're going to submit an article and it's going to go to a reviewer, or even a grant and it's going to go to a reviewer and they give you criticism, that's advice for free. take the advice, fix it, make your paper better, right? So you have to be brave enough to be open to the critics, because you want them to give you that feedback and for you to be better, right? There's nothing wrong with us wanting to be better, but you got to have thick skin, right? And thick skin doesn't have, you don't wake up every morning with thick skin. Your skin gets thicker every single day. It's something you have to work on. And if you don't have thick skin today, that's totally okay. That's not a deficiency. No one is born with thick skin. It's something that you develop over time. But it's those that are willing to take those risks that are going to have the thickest skin and are going to emerge to the point where they become the critics of everyone else, right? You know yourself, you have criticized a whole bunch of things, right? And it's totally okay to get it in return, all right? You also want to know who your competitors are. Let me tell you, I have a bunch of competitors out there, and I'm constantly watching them. As soon as they climb up one ladder, I'm trying to climb up the next ladder, right? It's always good to have some competition, some nice, healthy competition, right? Because it keeps you motivated. It keeps you wanting to continue to grow and to make yourself better. So I know this sounds like harshness, like, oh my gosh, I got to constantly be on my toes. I got to constantly, get my act together. And it takes work. It takes work to get there. But all of you are capable of getting there, right? And that's the beauty of it all, right? But you just need to be open to a whole bunch of, having access to these individuals, good or bad, right? They're all giving you some crazy advice, and you're like, you know what? Some you'll take, some will irritate you, but you're going to get over it, and you're going to emerge much stronger and much better and much more successful. So I want to switch now a little bit to talking a little bit about, your career, and then we're going to talk about strategic planning, and we'll take a few minutes to kind of begin to think about that. So there's different career paths, right? And it's really, really critical that you sit there and you think about, why do I want to pursue this career? What is it about this career that will make me happy, right? Let me tell you, it's your passion that's going to help you be successful. It's not about, Tony told me this is a really good career, or I want to be like Tony. It's about you. It's about your passion. It's about what fits into your lifestyle. Some of you want to go into academia, which is great. But just because somebody tells you to go into academia doesn't mean academia is for everyone, right? It's a brutal, each of these careers is tough and it's brutal, and you have to be prepared and ready for it. And the only way you're going to be prepared and ready for it is if you're passionate about it, because you're going to have some really, really bad days. And when those bad days happen, you got to sit there and say, you know what? I'm in it to win it. Right. So you got to keep going with it. You got to figure out what it is, but you got to answer those questions between you and yourself. Why do I want to do this? What do I want to do? And how am I going to get there? So let's talk a little bit about personal strategic planning, right? I think for those of you that may have attended my talk back in February, one of the things that I said is, when I was a young assistant professor starting out my career, every faculty meeting that I went to, the chair would sit there and talk about the strategic plan. And I was like, why are we doing this? Can we talk about something more exciting? And I remember pulling him aside in the hallway, and I said, can you explain to me this whole strategic planning stuff? Like, how does it, like, why are we doing it? And he said, because we want to make sure that we have the right direction for the success of the department, right? And I remember thinking to myself, while you're thinking about the success of the department, I'm thinking about my success, right? So maybe I need a strategic plan for me, right? And I remember saying something to him about me needing a strategic plan for me. He's like, you absolutely need one, because when you succeed, we all succeed, right? When you, for example, when you succeed right now, each of you individually successful. You know who succeeds? UNCG succeeds, right? So we gotta figure out the strategic plan, right? So there's a couple of things. This first step about a strategic plan is you really got to have a vision for what you wish to become, or what you wish your life to be like, right? Some may just say, you know what, I just want to get my PhD and stay home and do some freelancing. That's totally fine. If that's what your vision is, that's totally fine, right? Some of you are like, no, I want to get into this big, big crazy game of, working for the government or working in this crazy company that's doing some really interesting stuff, or I want to go, be a professor at this particular institution. Whatever makes you happy and you're passionate about, that's all that really matters, because you're the one who has to wake up every single day and make sure that you have the energy and the enthusiasm and the excitement, even when everything seems like it's going to fall apart. You're going to have lots of mountains and valleys in your career, and that's just normal, right? Nothing special there. It's just the normal way of life, right? But you got to start with knowing what your vision is. It's also okay for that vision to change over time, right? Just because you say, this is my vision today, doesn't mean like 3 years from now, your vision will change, right? But you have to have a vision, right? You also have to figure out, what is it that you feel you want your purpose to be? Some people are like, I just, like when I was in graduate school, I remember this one professor who said, my purpose is to get awards every single year. I just want awards. And every time he won an award, he ran around the hallway telling everybody he got an award. And that's just what made him happy. He wanted to be recognized. He wanted to, people to let him know that he was amazing, right? And that was his goal. His purpose is to get awards, right? And if that's your purpose, totally fine. That's between you and you, okay? But you got to have a purpose, right? Now, when you think a little bit about your personal purpose statement, think about how it's going to describe your intention and the impact you want to make in the world, right? What is it that you want to leave behind, right? And it also defines who you are. You also need to make sure that you are defining your core values, right? The core values will ensure that the strategic plan you create is the right plan for achieving what you want to do, okay? So for example, if your core value is, if you're sort of like, there's certain individuals who are just introverts and they just don't like being around people, right? And when you ask them, like, what do you want to do? They're like, I just want to stay in the lab and just do good things. And I just don't want to be around people. Well, that's fine. That's great, right? Let's just not have you maybe wanting to be in the classroom because that's not something you enjoy doing. You don't like people. That's fine, right? So think about your core values, right? Think about your core values and things that are going to make you feel that you are really, really achieving what you want to achieve. So what I'm going to do is, I hope I can do this. I want to put you in a breakout session. Maybe we can divide it into 3 breakout, but I want you to start thinking a little bit about what your core values are. And just to give you a little bit of an example, I'll tell you, for example, one of my core values, okay, for me, right? Core value is I need to stay sane and I need to learn how to stay calm, right? And it's important to me, right, from a core value, that anyone around me has the highest level of integrity. Okay. So to me, anytime I'm going to make a decision about anything I'm going to do or anyone I'm going to be around, the first thing that I ask myself is, am I going to be able to remain calm? And am I going to be able to work with this person? And is this person a person of integrity? Right. So my core value, and people who work with me every single day, they just know it's about integrity. Right. And now we all speak the same language. Anytime somebody's going to ask something, I'm like, okay, so have we followed the right compliance? Have we followed the right policy? Follow the process, right? And if you can follow the process, we're good to go. If you can't, pause. We're not doing it, right? So let's take a few minutes. I'm going to break it out into, let's do 3 breakout rooms. And what I want you to do is take about 5 minutes and talk a little bit about what you believe are core values. Then we're going to have like a quick 5 minutes to kind of just talk a little bit about what you decided within your individual groups to be core values. Okay, I'm going to create 4 breakout rooms. And oh my gosh, I hope I can do this. All right, I'm doing assignments.
Yeah, Dean Obare, I don't know if you want to put Dr. Bell to work this morning, but he's in this call too.
I may have put him somewhere.
That's okay. He can participate.
He can tell us about his core values.
Exactly.
Okay, I think everybody's I think, oh my gosh. Hopefully I did this correctly. Theo, I don't know where I put you in core. Hold on. Okay, he did go to, okay, perfect. Everybody's in a breakout session. Okay, perfect. Oh no, Nagla.
Yeah, Nagla's the GSA president, so she's here with me.
Oh,
But yeah, we can go into breakout rooms and do the activities too.
I just don't know how to, like,
Oh, because I'm the host?
because you're host, I don't think I can move you. You may feel like, very strongly about certain things that are important to you. Yeah. All right, I think everybody is back. So I wanted to see if we can get like a volunteer from room 1 who may be able to tell us a little bit about what are some of the core values that you identified you have. So room 1, I have either, wait a minute. I'm gonna have to skip room 1 for a second. Okay, they're back. Okay, room 1. So would Hillary or Jared, would either one of you like to tell us a little bit about what you thought were some core values to you when you were in your conversation?
I can say something. This is Hillary.
Go ahead, Hillary.
So like you said, I think there's healthy competition, but I also have several friends who graduated from the chemical engineering program I did and went to work for large corporations where like they're continuously ranked and they lose their jobs if they're ranked a certain way for too long, and it's like it's extremely competitive, and I feel like if that's the case, it's not great for the employees or for the company because there's a lot of people trying to undercut each other
Yeah.
the best that they can be. So that's, to me, I really want a more supportive environment.
Yeah, very, very good. So trying to identify places that would probably be unhealthy competition, right? And healthy cutthroat environments. Some of us call it cutthroat type of environments, non-supportive environments. Yeah, that's very good. So writing that down as a core value is maybe something that maybe doesn't bother you or something that you're just like, no way. That's not negotiable, right? So write that down for some of you. Some of you might want to be looking for that or asking those types of questions if you happen to be in an interview, right? So put that down as your core value. Very, very important. Thank you for sharing that. From room 2, we had Gayani, Kyle, or Pramitha. Any of you want to share a little bit about what you thought may have been 1 or 2 really important core values?
I guess I will.
Kyle, go ahead. Yeah.
I talked about, for me, it's a lot about continuous self-improvement and growth. I don't really like I don't like sitting at a desk, but I also don't like standing and walking around all the time in terms of work environment. But I want to kind of go from one problem to another problem and like kind of progress in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how for me, that's valuable to me. I also like Gayani and Pramitha both kind of mentioned work-life balance and trying to, manage all of that, because that obviously leads to a lot of stressors.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really good core value for anyone to have.
Yeah. Very good. One of the companies that's next door to JSNN, the CEO there built a gym. So people in the middle of the day are able to just go get on the treadmill and they come out and they're like, okay, let's keep going, because they felt like that, to him, one of his core values is like, he wants to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to feel healthy, right? And so he gives them time during the day, like go to the gym, go do what you got to do and come back stress-free. So things like that are things that you want to look at. Like, does this company value my health, right? My well-being, right? Sometimes even looking at the benefits packages, like it can tell you a lot about the type, what they value, and does that fit with your core values or not, right? Earlier this morning, I had a call with a faculty member who was looking for a position But he was like, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and I'm really looking for institutions that support that, right? And I was like, okay, great, so that's a core value to him, right? So just thinking about, what is it about, about you that you feel is so important and it's not negotiable. So Lexi reminded me, that's the term, it's not negotiable. We cannot do that. So thanks so much for sharing that, Kyle. From room 3, we had either Melinda, Michael, Larson, or Shane. Any of you 3 interested in sharing with us some things that you thought were critical?
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael.
So integrity and honesty are very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I also highly value adaptability. You don't know what life is going to throw at you, and so being able to adjust and continue to move forward is very important to me.
Excellent. Very, very good. I like that. Yeah, good. So integrity, adaptability, very good. Very good. Last room 4, last but not least, room 4. So we had Alex, Deb, Hunter, Nagla, Theo. Any of you 5? Anyone want to volunteer to tell us a little bit about maybe quick discussions that you had about core values?
Yeah, I think I can go ahead if you
Go
guys
ahead,
want to
Theo.
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about we just happened for Alex and Hunter for our kids to be from the same group. So, and on that end of the core value, I think we talked about respect. I mean, one that I found really important for me is respect. I think, and I explained the reason why, which is mostly based on my culture, because people from my tribe have putting a lot of accent on emphasizing on the respect of each other in the society. No matter what is your social status, you have to show respect to people and people in your entourage. I think it's very important in that way that it helps build a very healthy relationship with your entourage.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we mostly talked about that. I don't know if you guys want to add anything else, but it was centering around respect.
Very good. Very good. Alex?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, the first thing I said was, can I advocate for myself? That's like a big thing, what I want to do. And I think that's like a form of respect. Because like for me, you mentioned the Seventh-day Adventist, but like being a queer person, like, can I work in an institution where I'm respected? Can I speak up? Can I be validated? Can someone have my back?
Right.
And so I want to be in an environment where I can advocate for myself and be heard.
Very good. Very, very good. Excellent. So we've heard lots of things that I think each of you are like, you know what, this is so important and non-negotiable, right? So as you begin to think about that, think about what are the careers, right, that will allow you to do what you're thinking about, right? And I'll give you a personal story. And I shared this with Lexi a little while ago. When I was finishing up my postdoc, my young son was 2 years old. And I wanted to make sure that I went into a department that would provide me with the ability and the flexibility to not only be a good scientist, but to also be a good mom, right? That was not negotiable for me, right? And I remember in my job search, there was actually 2 institutions that were literally, one of them was within like 10 minutes of where my mother-in-law lived. And she had said, if you guys move here, I will make sure that I help you guys with the kid, right? But that department was so toxic that I could sense it, right? And I was like, there's just no way. There's no way I'm going to be able to work in that department, no matter how close my family is, right? And so the other institution was very similar. And I ended up moving like 7 hours away because I happened to be in a department that would allow me to do really good science and to have that work-life balance, right? So these choices matter, because right now when I reflect back, and this was a decision I made in 2004, but I reflect back now and I'm like, I could not have made a better decision, right? Because it has shaped who I've been able to become. Whereas had I gone to this other institution, I'm not really quite sure where I would be right now, right? So these decisions matter. So knowing your core values is so, so critical, okay? All right. So thank you very much for sharing. So I'm gonna just kind of go over one final thing I want to leave you with. Here's an example. This is a very, very sort of rough draft of what just a one pager that I would love for you guys to really take into consideration in terms of your strategic plan. It doesn't have to be complex, right? When you open strategic plans of other institutions or organizations, you see something that is like, big and huge and complicated and so many words. Here's a simple one that I have used with my grad students that is just easy to figure out, right? So remember I told you that I want you to sit down and think a little bit about what do you want your resume to look like, right, on the day that you graduate, right? Let's start thinking about that. And then once you figure that out, I want you to think a little bit more about, this thing is not showing up the way I need it to show up. Hold on one second. Oh no, hold on one second. I need to fix that slide because I need you to look at what the vision looks like. I want to make sure it's readable to you guys. Perfect. That's better. Okay. Let's do this one more time. Okay, so here's an example of sort of what it looks like. So we've talked about the core values. So I threw in there things like reputation, right? I want to have a good reputation. I want to have a clean reputation. I want to make sure that I have quality professional relationships, right? So I want my relationships with others to be professional, but to be of high quality and high basically respect, right? I want to make sure that I'm healthy, right? I want to make sure that I have a little bit of freedom to do the things that I aspire to do. And I want to make sure that I have financial security, right? So I threw those in there as some potential core values. Now, each of you have talked about other things like healthy competition, being able to see progression within your career, being able to have that work-life balance, the integrity, adaptability, respect, advocacy, being able to advocate for yourself. So all of those are very, very critical. So try to figure out like, what are your core values? Stick them in there, right? And then start thinking a little bit about your vision. Remember, we talked a little bit like, where do you want to see yourself, right? And who do you aspire to be? So in this particular example I'm throwing in, the vision is to have a successful career in my field that allows me to impact others, right? The purpose, I want to inspire, I want to guide people toward a successful career, right? So this is a very like typical, professor wannabe type purpose, right? Inspiring others and guiding others towards successful careers. But how do you get there, right? How do you get there? And this is where we talked a little bit about the importance of understanding like what does it take to get there, right? So I can sit there all day and say I want to be, I want to teach, I want to educate, but if we don't even know the process for how to apply for that job and how to be prepared to apply for that job, no matter what your vision is or your core values are, you're not going to get there, right? So I want you to spend some time really thinking about that career. What is it that you want to be? Start looking at other people's resumes who may help you define better the skills that you want to have, the application process. One of the things that I would do when I was at grad school, and I'll never forget this, I was a member of the American Chemical Society. And when you're a member of that, they send you, I think it's a bi-weekly magazine. It's called Chemical and Engineering News. So I would take that magazine and just start looking at the job ads. I know I wasn't qualified for any of them, but what I was trying to figure out is what are these universities looking for, right? And I would just sit there and just stare at it. And I don't know, there was just something weird, like, where I just wanted to just kind of know, right? But start looking at these job ads. What are they looking for? And I remember somebody saying teaching philosophy, and I was like, I don't know what that is. Nobody's teaching me this in my classroom. Let me try to ask for help, right? And that's when I started asking mentors like, hey, would you be willing to like talk to me about what is a teaching philosophy? Would you be able to share an example of what, a teaching philosophy looks like? And that's when I started learning. But sometimes, knowing like, here's this person who has made it to this career, right? And sort of like watching what they do, how they do it, right? And also, being able to look at these job ads. You're not applying for that job today or tomorrow, but someday you will, right? So start looking at what these job ads are looking for, are saying they are looking for in terms of skills, right? And try to figure out how do you backtrack and put that as a goal, right? Put that as a goal, right? I remember when I was looking for, faculty positions, one of the things they were like, you got to have a strong track record of publications. So for me, it was like, I need to increase my publication record. I'm going to be writing 6 hours a week. But I knew the writing alone wasn't sufficient. I needed to meet with my advisor. I needed to get advice. I needed to make sure that I was thinking carefully about my projects and how I was going to reach to a point where we could put a pause and write about it before I start on something else. I wasn't able to take a writing course, but I have always encouraged all my students, please consider taking a writing course. When I was with my research group, one of the things we would do is, if you go on YouTube, there is, and you Google Stanford scientific writing or something like that, they have somebody who actually has recorded all their videos. And I would just make my students, we would go to group meeting and I'm like, we're watching this video because I want you to kind of just listen to what they say about good quality writing. The other thing that I always have asked my personal students to do is, work on improving your communication skills, because you never know where that sponsor is going to be. You never know when you're running into them, right? So communication, whether it's through email, whether it's through texting, whether it's through what you throw in your social media websites, or whether you're just having a talk at a conference, make sure that you have really thought carefully about how you communicate. So that could be a goal, right? It could be a goal for you, right? But you know better what you're looking for. The other thing that I've always advocated for my students is let's try to figure out how we're going to strengthen your network, right? What is it that you need in your network? Let's try to figure out, let's give you opportunities to attend a webinar each month and seek opportunities to connect with speakers, attending conferences, asking your advisor for help in terms of connecting with people, getting them opportunities to volunteer, because those volunteer opportunities, remember the last time, those of you that attended my talk, I talked about, you may not feel that you have anything to contribute at this time because you are wanting people to help you. But I told you, some of the most valuable assets you have right now is your time, right? And one of the things you can be doing with your time is strategic volunteering, right? Trying to figure out, how do I volunteer in the right places that will give me a way to connect and build that network that I so critically need, right? And you're never too old, never too young to build that network. Okay, so I want to just leave you with that as an example. If you want to use your cell phone to take a quick picture of the screen, feel free to go ahead and do that. But I encourage each of you to do so I've given you a couple of assignments, right? One is sit down and start thinking about what that resume is going to look like on the day you graduate, right? Start thinking about your core values and throw together a very rough draft of your strategic plan, right? Where you've had an opportunity to think about your vision, your purpose, your core values, and what are some of those goals that you want to be working on right now that will open those doors for you. Okay, so I think that's enough homework. And I'll stop now because I know some of you may have either a class or something that you need to attend. But thank you for making time to come in and talk a little bit about this. As I've said before, success breeds success, right? You succeed, we all succeed, right? So thank you for the time that you've devoted to making sure that you're taking tips on being even more successful than you already are. But I've definitely enjoyed sharing this hour with you.
Thank you so much, Dean Obare. I'm sure everybody appreciated this talk as much as I did. I think this was really good to see it laid out too, and kind of get those steps for homework that I'm also going to post on YouTube so everybody can see that. So thank you so much again for your time, Dean Obare. It's always great to host you with GSA, and we look back to have you at more future events too.
All right, thank you so much. And for my JSNN team, I know some of your colleagues were trying to join and there was an issue. So if you want, you're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to do this for all of you at JSNN. Okay. All right, thank you everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.